The Islamic Republic is actually playing a very strategic game. Like, you shouldn't underestimate your enemy. I know, like, we keep saying these are people are durka durka. They are retarded when it comes to their, philosophy of the world. But when it comes to, playing an asymmetric warfare, they're doing everything right, based on their ability, limited ability that they have. Right. Let me put this over here. All right. So here's the part that they could mine. The part that they could mine is between Larak and and Oman. So if they mine only this area, then what they have created is a toll booth, and they're collecting $2 million a ship if it has oil and gas between the Larak Island and Qeshm Island. They're allowing the ships to go through here, and they are mining this area, and they have turned this area into a toll booth. And 2 million per ship, that's actually ends up being a lot. Like, I forgot how much it was, but it was billions a day, and that adds up to a lot of money. The only reason the mines are very cheap, drones are very cheap, and no matter how much you destroy the military ability of the Islamic Republic, as long as they are still alive, they will be able to produce that. And by having even the smallest amount of risk to ships that are not following their directions on where do you go and what you do, then the missiles, the drones, they don't. I mean, the mines, they don't even have to be accurate. These commercial ships are very risk averse, so they will do what they're told to make sure that they don't get bombed, right? So, and also I've heard, like, right now, a lot of they never actually completely close the Strait of Hormuz because they need to be able to sell their own oil, right? And all the ships that have Chinese flags and Indian flags and, I don't know, Iraqi and Pakistani flags, I think they're letting them go through right now. And because all the oil that they want to sell is going through, and at a high price right now. Oil prices are going up, and they're not doing it at a discount. You remember how the Islamic Republic was selling its oil at a discount to China? There's no discount anymore. There's so much demand right now that they're making a huge profit. So there's a lot of money going to, because of oil prices going up and because they have this control over the Hormuz Strait. They're making a lot of money, and all of that money is going into their war machine, and all of that money is going to be able to they're going to be able to spend that on making more drones, making more missiles, making more mines, spending it more on more proxy groups. Okay, which is easily they could eat with all the money that they're making, they could easily just buy Hashto Shabi, for example, from Iraq, and bring Fatima and Zainabiyun from Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they could easily make up for that. Again, guys, I'm just saying all of this, but I'm not saying, I'm not trying to paint it like a really negative picture. I'm just giving you the other side of all of this so that we could think about it here out loud and think about what do you guys think, like the other side of this narrative, right? Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. There's a report: over 4,700 security forces killed in U.S. Israeli strikes in Iran. Yeah, 4,700 is significant because it scares the other security forces, but it's like, I know we have been seeing a lot of, like, footage of, like, I don't know, checkpoints being blown up, security forces being killed here and there, but 4,700 is not a number that you can't replace. Um, I mean, I think that the influence of mass defections and people being afraid and not showing up is higher than the actual number of people that you killed, because 4,700 is nothing compared to the total forces that they have. So I think the main reason why the effect of these security forces being killed is not that they have been eliminated, is the mental impact that it has on the other people. That is astronomically higher. But when they bring Hash Shabi, as we saw a few days ago, coming in from Iraq to Iran, yeah, especially with the money, these are mercenaries, and and the Islamic Republic is making so much money that they could afford them right now. So on that front, we need to be worried regarding the fact that, okay, even if the Iranian people, because the solution to all of this is regime change. You could see that the Islamic Republic, without right now, will be able to survive and will be able to cause such an economic damage to the whole world that even without its missiles, without its proxies, just with the Hormuz Strait, they basically have a huge leverage over the whole world. So this is so the economic cost is that, and also the political cost is the Islamic Republic doesn't pay political cost because it's not a democracy, right? So they run in people suffering, even their own followers suffering. Well, at the end of the day, it's not a democracy. It's difficult for the Islamic Republic because their followers will, if they get frustrated at some point, we're going to see less support from even the supporters of the regime for the regime. However, whatever that political cost is within Iran to the Islamic Republic, the political cost in United States to President Trump is higher because the United States is a democracy. So the Islamic Republic is calculating that I could shut up my people, you can't. So the longer I keep this situation in the Hormuz Strait, at some point, I mean, the midterms are coming, and a lot of people's analysis are that President Trump has given up on winning the midterms, anyways. Like they consider it a loss. But the counter to that is that Congress is becoming less and less relevant. I don't know if how much of an impact this is going to have. The legislative body as a whole is becoming less influential, on what the president can do. But and I know Congress has the power of not giving the money that President Trump might require for continuing the military operations. But I've also heard that once you deploy the troops, so the president has the power to deploy troops with or without Congress approving the budget for military operations. And once troops are deployed, then usually, like historically, then Congress has to give fund it because they don't want the troops who have already been deployed. You don't want them to be defenseless. So I don't know how that works out, but this is a legislative body in the United States that has, relative to the power of president, it has become it's the weakest it has ever been. So I don't know how impactful the midterms are going to be. But anyways, these are all the things that people are discussing. I just gave you the most negative picture possible, not just so that here, like because a lot of us here agree with each other, and I just wanted to make sure that because I consume a lot of content from people from the other side of us, I just want to come and put it here so that we're thinking about them as well. Let me know, by the way, if you like me doing that in the chat. If this is a good thing to do, like, do you, because I do spend a lot of time listening to people from the other side, and let me know if me bringing it here is helpful. Anyways.
So I am first on the list today, but my question is not in regard to any of this, but rather kind of what atheism and like what's filling the void in the absence of as much religion. Would you like me to save that for later and let us stick on the Iran?
No, no, no,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I was researching late into the night how so it was kind of like a rabbit hole situation and many diverging paths. We are so obsessed in the West with racism, with, especially in America, anti racism. One thing that really stands out to me is what they've kind of coined as the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Hmm.
I see that happening a lot with leftist white America when viewing Arab or Muslim countries and some of the behaviors that we see that come out of them. So I went into Grok to have a conversation. And one of the points that Grok made was that it's the result of a void left by declining traditional religion. Not, it made a point to say, like, not that atheists are to blame, but that humans, we don't just suddenly become rationalists when we now get rid of religion, that there is a void that's created from just like evolutionary focus. And so it talked about that we still crave sacredness, purity, group belonging, atonement, and moral superiority. And that secular societies will fill that hole with things like political religions because they need to mimic that old structure. So, a few of the little things that they highlighted now, what original sin is whiteness or privilege. something that you can never fully escape and that you need to like atone for over and over. That there's confession and repentance, but now it's going out and publicly doing work, making DEI statements and presenting yourself as morally superior by like you're like repenting for all of these white people. There's salvation, which is becoming anti racist, becoming an ally, more activism. And there's proselytizing. So, media, schools, corporations spreading this anti racist ideology. And so I also asked for some statistics in the atheist space and saw that atheists most lean strongly liberal and progressive. That's a Pew Research information article showing that 67% identify as liberal and 84% democratic, which is really high considering like true religious, when we're comparing it to like religious people or not religious people, but it seems that that would kind of support the idea that we're still looking for a religion and that this happens. So I know that you are a classical liberal, if I remember you saying that before. How do you feel about those numbers? And how do you find atheist spaces when you look at kind of what Grok is saying about filling that void and your experience in them? Now, granted, I know that because of what you do, you will attract a lot of people who are not so left leaning. You'll have trolls, but people flock to you who are more like you. So you're going to have seen a lot of classical liberal types, but kind of taking both of those into consideration. How have you found that space? And then also, what do you think, if this is a problem, what do you think we can do to help it or prevent it or bring some of those people out of trying to get rid of one cult for another?
So religion is something that has evolved with humanity, and religion is a meme, but our the evolution of religion has happened alongside with a biological gene, like that meme, that evolution of that meme happened alongside with the evolution of humans, a biological evolution. So as religion was evolving, the human was evolving as well, and they become so interconnected that the need for so many things that religion provides. So they is survival depends on humans, but humans' survival was also became more dependent on a lot of things that religion provide, right? So think about pre-civilizational humans. The main thing that made humans survive was their group belonging and their tribes and their cooperation that they did within the tribes, right? So there are many things that there are a lot of ways there are many things that has been hard coded in our brain that makes us certain rituals, certain ways of looking at the world, certain ways that we communicate with each other, certain desires, fears, and hopes that we have that makes us work much better in a tribe, cooperate with each other, and signal to each other that we're part of the tribe and who's in the group and who's outside of the group. So innately, we have a desire for rituals, we have a desire for group belonging, we have a desire for inspiration, for stories, story of our like our Genesis story, purpose, sense of purpose, a sense of being under the protection of something much bigger than ourselves. These are a lot of desires that humans have that makes them aligned with each other to work together in one direction as followers at a certain way in one direction instead of everybody going their own way. However, evolutionary is also has made sense for some a small percentage of the society to become the black sheep, to not be followers, even though people being followers of the whatever methods or tradition that they inherit keeps the group in one direction and makes the group work a lot better. But because trying and experimenting, just like in the gene world, mutations work as a way to try new methods sometimes within societies, within the evolution of memes. Black sheeps, people who don't enjoy, rebels who are more naturally rebels, they are basically a small percentage, because if they're too much, nothing will work out. But you need a small percentage of rebels to try out new methods. And if they fail, the society will reject them and it will kill them or execute them or whatever. But all of a sudden, some of them will come up with ways that works, and all of a sudden they become the new norm, right? Just like mutations in evolution. So atheists are usually part of this rebel group that are rejecting, the what's in society. The problem with atheists is that because they don't see the sense the need, like for the things that other people do innately have, that's why they become religious. They assume that nobody needs it because they don't need it. They don't like, I don't understand what these people, I don't understand why people need this, right? It doesn't resonate with them, so they think everybody could just live without them because they can't live without them. They are able to live without them, right? But if they actually if they actually study human behavior and human psychology and our evolution, they're like, this is actually neat. So how do you, as an atheist myself, how do I, as somebody who believes that if we believe more true things, that's better for society, but I also I understand that these are human needs. The way I look at it is that people don't have to get rid of their rituals and traditions and symbols and their communities just because they don't believe. Like, I encourage atheists to consider that, okay, just because you don't believe in God, that doesn't mean you don't go to the church. like you could, like, if you realize that you don't believe in God, you could still go to church. You could still participate. You could go to the synagogue. I don't know if we could do that with Islam because Islam is, garbage. But maybe one day, like, I'm in favor of secularization. I'm not in favor of reforming, for example, Islam. I'm in favor of secularization. Secularization. So reform is basically keeping the belief but changing the wrapping, changing the how it looks from the outside, but keeping the core belief. Secularization is the opposite of reform. Secularization gets rid of the beliefs, but keeps some of the traditions and rituals, just like Christmas, for example. Christmas is a secularization of a Christian tradition. You keep everything, but you don't. It doesn't, like, Christmas is not for Christians. Like, many non-Christians celebrate Christmas as well. Or, like, if somebody is celebrating Easter with bunnies and Easter eggs or whatever, like, that has, like, it's not very Christian anymore. It's just like a secular tradition. So, for example, I know in Europe, so many atheists go to church every Sunday just because it's the thing to do, and that's where everybody goes, and that's how people meet each other, right? I think a lot of these traditions could be secularized. However, I do also think that we do have an alternative to religion that works, that is not these progressive, left-leaning, far leftist traditions that you mentioned. The best alternative, I think, to religion that provides many of what religion offers that humans need, to me, is nationalism. Okay, is patriotism and nationalism, because it does give you a sense of belonging. It does give you a sense of being part of something bigger than yourself. It does give you a sense of purpose and a collective identity, like religion does, and without necessarily having to believe in many things that religion requires you to believe in. And it has proven to be a very productive, very, very efficient way of making people work with each other for the same and the same direction. However, the problem with patriotism or nationalism is that one thing that we require is traditions and genesis story that is old, very old. Sometimes it needs to be, I don't know how old it needs to be, but it seems like we do find meaning in things that are ancient, or at least like has some history in it. This is why three countries, specifically Israel, India, and Iran, their patriotism is also connected to a religion that is belongs to that land. So their religious symbols and traditions also work in the direction, like, is not separated from that expression of their patriotism. So, for example, in Israel, Judaism is not just a religion; it's something that is an expression of Israel itself as a country. In Iran, Zoroastrian symbols, traditions. It's not just a religion. It also has turned into the branding of the rituals, everything is the branding of the patriotism and national symbols. So that those ancient traditions. So these two things are connected. So these three countries are like Hinduism also with India. These three countries are lucky enough to to be able, this modern expression of a sense of nationalism also comes with a whole set of ancient symbols and traditions and rituals that could makes the sense of nationalism also ancient and old and a lot more meaningful, right? Other countries, though, United States specifically, has proven that even though these three countries are lucky enough to have something ancient, United States has proven that as long as it's a little bit old, it doesn't need to be ancient, because United States has created a sense of patriotism and nationalism that and their founding fathers, for example, and their constitution, they have turned that into something sacred. Like, the founding fathers have turned into like saint-like figures. The constitution has turned into like a sacred document, and they have created in the expression of patriotism and nationalism in the United States, they have created a whole bunch of rituals and traditions, 4th of July and everything. So you could see that even if something is like less than, it doesn't have to be thousands of years old for you to be able to create, like, the Genesis story of United States is also something that is like the Genesis story in the Bible, all of that. So it doesn't really have to be that old for you to create all that sense of belonging, community, something bigger than yourself, something to move, something, a purpose, all of that. So United States has been a very effective way to demonstrate that that's possible even with that. But I do believe that it's possible. But if you do have something ancient like Israel, like Iran, like India, I think that's something very valuable. You should take advantage of that as much as possible. But again, this is not exclusive. So the thing that we need to teach, so there's two waves of atheists. The first wave of atheists are the rebels who don't even get it, that this is what people want, because they don't need it. What we need to do is to communicate to people that you're not a good representation. Like I'm one of those people. I'm not Me and those people are not a good representation of what people's needs are. And then the second wave of atheists, because once something becomes normalized, then the people who become part of that community are not necessarily rebels, because it's now too common for you to require to be a rebel to join it. These are atheists who do feel the sense that they need those things, right? They need to them, they need to be communicated with them that you could keep all your traditions. Like, this is one thing that I, for example, learned in Israel. There are many atheists in Israel that do all of their Jewish traditions. They go to synagogue, they read the Torah, they do all the Jewish traditions. They just don't believe in it. I've heard of even atheist rabbis who said, like, I don't believe any of these stories, these are just myth, but they are part of our culture. So you could communicate to more people who are atheists that you could keep all your traditions without actually believing in it. Yeah, atheist rabbis, yes, there are atheist rabbis. There are even atheist priests who are like, they don't believe in God, but they think like, yeah, this is just our culture, we do it because it's our culture. Yeah.
I'm going to pull up the people who asked to respond just for time's sake. So, Blake, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I very much agree with a lot of what Armin said. I do wonder if people start saying we're doing these rituals just for their own sake rather than because they have some kind of transcendental meaning, if they will start to lose that meaning. But I do think that the key thing that we need as humans is not necessarily religion, it's a system of values that we're committed to. And I think that what wokeism and progressivism provide is a set of values that is shared by a group, and in that way it takes the place of a religion. So is it a, like, which direction is the causality going, if that makes sense? Right? Because progressivism derives in large part from Marxism and from Hegel, and they reject the idea of religion. So on the one hand, you could say, well, atheists are attracted to this group because they reject religion, and then they get sucked into the other things. But also, people who get into this group may then end up rejecting religion because they say, oh, religions are backwards and counter progressive and all these different things, and we're atheists. But how many of them believe in superstitions? Like, so many people who are on that woke progressive side also believe in things like horoscopes and crystal therapies, like you hold a gemstone next to your head and it somehow, I don't know what they do with it, okay? But you know what I'm saying, right? Like, they're not exactly, oh, we reject superstition. They just replace one superstition with another. And I don't know if you're familiar with James Lindsay. I figured you would be, Armin. You should look into him. So he does a really good job of breaking this stuff down, and he is an atheist, but he also has some respect for what religious tradition can do. And he's written some books on like why is progressivism so appealing and what can we do about it and things like this. So, but yeah, I mean, I largely agree with Armin, so that's why my response is a little incoherent here because he already hit a lot of the important points, right? But I do question though whether is it really a good idea to continue a tradition if you also say, well, I don't believe this tradition really has any meaning. The key thing is that we need to focus on the values that we have. Like the reason that America is in crisis right now is because half of America doesn't have the same vision for America as the other half. Like some of us want to have a classical liberal set of values, and some people want the progressive set of values. And that's really the problem. The reason why politics has become more divisive is it used to be that most people agreed on the goal, just not how to get there. And now we don't even have the same goal. So it doesn't matter if we agree on how to get there or not because we don't want to go to the same place.
I do believe that it's possible, if even if people don't believe that a book is describing objective reality, whether they would be good enough for them to use it as a way to bond with each other. And I know that's possible because the Iranian people have done that with Shahnameh. Shahnameh, Iranian people understand that that's a book that does not is it's a book of myth, but at the same time they consider that to be the most sacred book in Iran. And it represents, it bonds us of more than any other book in Iran, right? So it doesn't, as long as it represents their values, and that's what you were so correct, like it needs to reflect our shared values. It doesn't really need to describe objective reality, as long as it somehow communicates like our DNA to us somehow. And again, the solution to me is that if people need rituals and a set of values, and some symbols and rituals to represent that, nationalism is the way to go. If you're saying, oh, people don't have religions, so that's why they have turned progressivism into its own something as a replacement to a religion. Well, the solution is that if you don't have religion, there's something better than that, which is nationalism, and we need to turn that into. We need to create. We can't just say like, oh, I support my country. I love my country. That's not good enough. We need to create communities, rituals, symbols, everything that religion has around that sense of nationalism. United States has done that very effectively.